Today, for the very first of our live online interviews, I have very great pleasure in introducing Ruhi Akhtar, a close friend of mine and founder of grassroots charity Refugee Biriyani and Bananas. Salam alaikum, sis.
Walaikum assalam.
Thank you so much for being with us here today, Ruhi. And thank you too to everybody that's joining us online. Please add a heart or a thumbs up to show your appreciation for Ruhi and her selfless work for refugees throughout this interview. Comment and add questions, because at the end of this, we'll have plenty of time to put your questions to Ruhi as well. Ruhi's from Newcastle, but she's joining us live today from the Greek island of Chios, where she's been based full-time for the last 6 months. She's in Chios because it's the second largest of the Aegean islands, closest to Turkey and home to the Vial Refugee Camp, an official European hotspot for people coming to Europe hoping for safety and the chance to start a new life in peace. Ruhi, it's really great to speak to you today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Perhaps you can start by sharing a little about who you are and how you first started Refugee Biriyani and Bananas.
So my name is Ruhi. I am from the northeast of England. I work for the National Health Service as a specialist podiatrist, and I started volunteering in what's now known as the recent refugee crisis since September 2015. And I started because when I saw the dead brown body of Aylan Kurdi, 3-year-old Syrian boy washed up on the Turkish shores, he was trying to reach Greece from Turkey on a rubber dinghy, and it capsized and he drowned. And a lot of people may have seen that image and it may have affected them, but for me, it was about my nephew was 3-year-old, same age, and that night I couldn't sleep. I just kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking, this could have been my child, this could have been my nephew, I have to do something about it. And I thought, enough sharing on social media, enough reading the news, I have to do something actively. So I started sending aid off with other organizations to northern France and to Syria. And then someone said to me, you don't know what it's like until you've been out yourself. So I went on an aid convoy to Calais and Dunkirk. And when I got there and I saw the living conditions people were living under, and also met the people and heard the stories, I knew I couldn't turn back. I had to keep helping and supporting. And then we ended up doing a biryani mission where we provided 2,500 portions of biryani and bananas to Dunkirk, the unofficial camp. And after that, we formed as a grassroots organization called Refugee Biriyani and Bananas.
And it's stuck with you ever since.
Yeah, it has been.
And I know that since 2015 that you've gone on aid missions to lots of other places, to northern Iraq, to other places in Greece, to Bosnia, but your heart's most often been drawn to Chios. Can you tell us what awaits people landing in Chios as refugees and why you've been so compelled to help here?
Yes, my heart has always been drawn to Chios, and I will keep supporting until there is no longer a need. I'm on a 3-year career break at the moment, and as I said in another interview the other day, I could be volunteering anywhere where it's safe and practical, but I'm on Chios because the needs are in Chios. People are arriving here. It is one of the hotspots. They come to Vial Refugee Camp. The camp capacity is for 1,100 people, and currently there's over 5,300 people. It's 5 times over capacity. When I came back in December, there was 6,000 people. Majority of the people are living in tents and makeshift shelters. They can't practice social distancing and they can't even wash their hands properly. We are talking about a camp where the water was cut off. I mean, there's only one running tap between 1,300 people, but the water taps were cut off, and people were so desperate that they had to dig their own wells to be able to extract water. And we're talking about a camp where a 9-month-old baby was bitten by a snake and was hospitalized as an emergency. People here, they don't have enough food. The camp provides the food, but it is small, it is measly, it's tasteless, it's bland, it does not sustain people, and they have to wait in line for 2-3 hours to get it. And people living in the tents and makeshift shelters, some people don't even have shelters actually. It's without heating, lighting, electricity, water. It's inhumane. People should not be living like this at all.
No, I appreciate that. And I've seen it for myself. I've come out and I've volunteered with you and I've seen it for myself. And it shocks me every time. Can you explain a little bit how the camp is set up? I know that there's some containers some places. People often talk about unaccompanied minors, the different nationalities living there. Can you tell us a bit about the population that's living there?
So as I said, there's about 5,300 people. There's over 1,000 children and babies. There are people from Syria, Iraq, Palestine, Afghanistan, Somalia. We've got populations from Cameroon and Congo, Kyrgyzstan, Yemen. People from all over at the moment. It's changed a lot since when I first started volunteering, when there was majority Syrians at the time. And that has, that it's amazing to see the different cultures, but obviously that can lead to different tensions as well when little things happen. You have safe zones for unaccompanied minors, but there are also many unaccompanied minors outside safe zone as well. So like you said, you have the containers, and that's designed for 1,100 people. And then the rest, 4,000 plus, are outside in tents and makeshift shelters.
Wow. And the containers are, who can live in a container? Who's supposed to live in them, and who's actually living in them, and how many people?
I think it all depends on how long the people have been there, because some of the areas will be managed by, like, the Afghan area will be managed by the Afghan leader, so he will appoint. So it's not really the authorities appointing people into containers. But again, even in the containers, there's about 10 to 15 people living in containers. Families sharing as well. So you'll have women sharing with men that they don't know who they are. And I just know from a culture point of view, that's really quite difficult.
Yeah, no, exactly. And what about the provisions that the state, like the state provides for people in the camp? You talked about the food earlier, for example. So what food is coming in?
So they get food 3 times a day. People have to stand in line for 2-3 hours, as I said. They also get a cash allowance of €90 for the first person in the family, and then it gets like lesser and lesser for how many people in the family, which is not enough. That is per month, actually. So if you've got children who need diapers and other provisions, it's not enough. The Food is one of the most needed items. People always ask me for food, and it's one of the things that we provide for the people. They will say, food is not good, food is not good. Sometimes it is spoiled, there's been maggots, people throw it away. It's bland and tasteless. I have tasted it myself. I have sort of investigated it myself, and it's the food that I tasted actually tasted like vomit. So
yeah, that's my experience too. I couldn't work out what it was. I didn't know what it was.
Like mushy vomit. That's what it was.
Yeah, which is disgusting. Totally disgusting. And so when people ask for food, they're often asking for ingredients so that they can either recook the food that's been provided to them, if it's chicken or something maybe a bit undercooked, or to add spices and flavors and just be able to create something that's edible.
Yes, exactly. And we try and provide sort of nutrient-dense food, or things like dates during Ramadan as well, because that's something they ask for. But then we provided dates for everybody because it's so nutritious. And we try to provide things like chickpeas and lentils just to try and get some. People are malnutrition. You can see malnutrition in people, and it doesn't sustain themselves, and it affects their mental health as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm sure many people have captured your heart over the years. I know that they have. I've met some of them. Do you have a person, a family, or a community person that's really captured your heart that you could perhaps share a little bit now to make it a bit more personal?
Okay, so I'm not going to tell you about a single person or a family. I'm actually going to tell you about a group of people. And they are the men and the brothers who are displaced. And I often feel like the men from family units, the young single men and the older boys, unaccompanied minors, are often missed out in aid work. There's often, like, when we try and get donations for people don't want to give for the men. Of course, rightfully so. The women and the children are more vulnerable, but these are the guys who are helping us with our distributions, and they want us to prioritize the women and the families and the children, and we do, but then they get forgotten about. I've seen aid containers where very little has been for the men. So when I send aid containers from England, we have majority men's aid, the right sizes. We have to remember that people don't need XXL clothes in majority,
Right.
Just to tell you a little bit personally about the guys, some of them are very young. Some of them have left home when they've been very young. They are here without their families, mental health issues, suicidal ideations, self-harm scars are rife. But yet they're so inspiring and so strong. And I think, as activists, as humanitarians, as a proud feminist, if we don't fight for equality and we forget about these people, that's not okay. And we all have fathers, brothers, sons, nephews, and these people are the same. So the brothers.
No, I completely agree with you, and I've seen it so many times. We've opened containers that's full of women and children's things. so little for the men, and the XL thing as well. You know, people are malnourished. XL sizes are no good for them whatsoever. So thinking about how you help specifically then, you've talked about how you support the men in your containers. Can you talk us through what the effort that goes into a distribution? You talk about 5,300 people in camp and the number of the men that are there and doing a distribution. So from deciding which need is most important and which one you're going to do, to the lead time of how long it takes to raise the money or to get a container across, to actually then getting volunteers on board and then doing a distribution. People think it happens easily, but I know that it doesn't. It takes a huge amount of organisation. Can you talk us through what an aid mission looks like for you?
So
and where you find your energy?
Energy comes from the people. They are my inspiration. I mean, just seeing what they're going through and how inspiring they are and how much they look after us as well as volunteers. We have to keep helping. That's the bottom line, basically. So the distributions we do individualized distributions as an organization as well, like wheelchairs or baby strollers, but we focus on mass aid distributions, which means we provide aid for, say, 5,000 people or more, or, you know, hundreds of people. We try and cover the whole caseload, or we will do distributions for, say, all the men in camp above the age of 14. A lot of preparation goes into it. A lot of planning and organization goes into it as well. We base our distributions around what the people want. So we will go to camp, we will speak to the people themselves, we will speak to the community leaders, because often, like, sometimes volunteers or organizations may have this preconceived ideas that this is what is needed, but I want to base myself on and what we do on what the people want. And we also talk to other organizations and the authorities. So we really try and fill the gaps rather than trying to duplicate what other people are doing. Like, we don't want to have all our organizations providing baby strollers, for example. So, I mean, two of the big things I do here in Chios is providing aid for the men over the age of 14 now. So before we used to do over the age of 16, but we noticed a gap where people were coming and saying, there's, you know, the adult size, but there's not enough clothes for them with other organizations. So we provide hygiene products, shoes, and clothes for the men. And one of the other big things we do is food distributions. If I'm to tell you about the winter distribution we did starting December, planning started from August last year, actually. So, and, you know, this year's a bit of a worry because we can't get containers coming over and everyone's financially strained as well because of the coronavirus pandemic. So it is a worry. But just to give you an example, a lot of fundraising goes into place. We have organizations helping us, like Donate for Refugees, who give us grants. So thank you so much for that. We try and buy on the ground where we can to try and support the local economy and if it's feasible as well. Otherwise, we as an organization get containers of aid from England. My containers are very specialist containers. So we have majority food aid and men's aid, which it's not normal when you get a container. And we have lots of organizations helping us, like collect aid. There's Mersey Aid who help us with like sorting and packing of that as well. So big shout out to them. So we will get aid in container, we will get aid bought on the ground. We share aid with other organizations. So we will give ladies and baby projects to other organizations and they will give us the men's aid. And then, so that's months and months in preparation. We've gone away from the situation in 2015 where we were taking van loads of aid to, say, Dunkirk or Calais or Idomeni then, and just kind of giving so we can be more organized to try and fill the gaps, cover people better. And so we have like a registration system and a ticketing system so we don't duplicate and we can cover everybody who wants. So then we go into enlisting volunteers. So we get volunteers. We have a vetting process. Some are from camp. We do have sisters helping as well. Not right now, but we did in the past. We had some lovely Yazidi girls helping us and Syrian girls as well. The majority are brothers from camp who are helping us. They help us with everything from translation to preparation to the execution of distribution. And then we get volunteers coming from abroad as well. Right now, we don't have enough volunteers on the ground because many left due to the pandemic and also because of the tensions from the angry locals and the right wing. So they left as well. We really need more volunteers on the ground, in particular volunteer drivers. That's really needed who can drive bigger vehicles like vans. That's something that I always struggle with. And then we go on to the distribution. Like I said, we have a ticketing system and a registration system, and we have all the sizes organized in different sizes, different types. It takes a lot of preparation. Right now, I'm preparing for a big food aid mission. So this is going to be my post-lockdown food packs. And I'm going to be providing oil, rice, sugar, salt, lentils, and tomato sauce to 5,000 people. And I've changed the system a little bit. Before we were giving one pack per family or one pack between 4 or 5 people to share, and then it wasn't quite accurate because it wasn't quite fair that a family of 2 were getting the same as a family of 4.
Yeah.
So this is going to be my biggest food aid mission. I'm actually preparing 5,000 packs, individual packs for people, and everybody's going to be registered. So good luck for that.
And what's your fundraising target to be able to provide 5,000 of those packs?
£22,000. £20,000. I bought half of the supplies. If you go onto my page, Refugee Biriyani and Bananas, on my personal page, you'll see some of the food arrived yesterday, and more's coming. Some of the other organisations on the ground, like Action for Education, and some of our community volunteers. I like to call them my brothers rather than community volunteers, actually, because we're all the same. But they're coming to help to pack it all. But it's going to be big. I mean, the biggest food packs I ever did was 3,000 for Dunkirk once with my team. So this is going to be the biggest.
I wish I was there to help you. You know, I mean it.
I wish you were too. I wish you were too.
And then in terms of the distribution, you have to be really fair in camp as well, don't you? To make sure that everybody gets the same, everybody knows that they've received the same as their neighbour, but that everyone does get. And so you can't distribute in one day. You have to spread it out.
Yeah, I think this distribution could take up to 20 days, I think. I mean, the clothes distribution took a month. It's just longer than before. In Idumeni, you go for one day and give as much as you can. You have to be really organized, but it's fairer and it is more equitable, and you've covered people fairly, and then you get people's trust as well. Because when there's a camp with almost 6,000 people, tensions are going to be heightened. When they're starving, when they're cold, or when they've got heat stroke because it's so hot and tense, it's natural that there's going to be tensions, or they will think someone's getting more than others. So this is where having the right translators, having experienced volunteers as well as new volunteers as well, that's needed, having enough aid, being able to get people's trust is so important.
Yeah, no, exactly. And over the last 5 years, it's been pretty turbulent times for the refugee crisis. But this year, 2020, every week, every day, we think it can't get any worse, and then it suddenly got worse. Can you talk us a little bit about what's happened specifically in the first half of this year? And obviously, in the last week or so, Greece has reopened after lockdown, but how COVID-19 and the international pandemic has affected people in refugee camps, and especially in Vial.
So obviously we're on the Greek island of Chios. It is one of the hotspots here where people arrive from Turkey, and this is the worst I've ever known it, and I've been coming here for 3 years. It's like, as you said, one thing after another. We had a really harsh winter. We had so many people in camp. Last year, this time, there was 1,800 people. Now there's 5,300 people. I've actually made a list because I thought I was going to forget it all. And summer in general, there's always a lack of aid. And now there's going to be even less, with less containers and financial struggles. We then had, at the beginning of the year, the right-wing attacks and angry locals who were protesting against the closed camps, displaced people, and there seemed to be this sense of attacks against the volunteers, so people were being threatened. And my car was followed once, which was really scary. We had the camps were being barricaded, protested. We couldn't get aid in there. They couldn't come out either. Warehouses were burned down. Aid was destroyed. And then we had where Turkey said they were going to open their borders, and then Greece tightened the borders, which meant that the boats that were coming in, people were stranded at the port. They were not being taken to the out camp. They were there for 24 hours. Sometimes when I drove around, there was rain and people were just outside, hundreds of people. And then we had, and we weren't allowed to help them like before either. Asylum claims were suspended. And then the laws actually have been changing in Greece as well. So it just means that people who are getting second rejections on their asylum claims are being detained. They were being detained before, but once they appealed, they were allowed out, and now that's not happening. So we have people from camp families, including single men, who are actually in prison and they have not done a crime. And the situation is so bad in there, a lack of medical care. And that is something else that we support, detainees. I don't know why they're detained. It's just inhuman. And then obviously, like with this amount of people, there's heightened tensions. A woman died in camp, and the camp residents felt it was because of neglect from the authorities, which led on to protests from the residents. And there was a big fire where many tents were burnt down and hundreds of people were left without any shelter. this is the worst I've known it. Within a period of 3 days, there was 2 incidents where police fired tear gas into camp. There's hundreds of children, thousands of children and women in there. This is chemicals,
I know. And you had text messages, didn't you, from
Yeah.
some of the residents sort of saying, we're standing out in the cold. We've got nowhere. It's nighttime. We don't have anywhere to sleep. We don't have any tent or any shelter. What are we supposed to do?
Yeah, it was just like looking into nothing. Like, what do we do? And then we couldn't get aid in. I mean, we got some aid in. We got some blankets into people who lost in the fire, but it was not nearly enough as we could have done if we weren't in coronavirus lockdown. So, and then the next thing, obviously, it's Ramadan right now as well. So people are fasting. I mean, I personally feel like when you're in that situation, and I've said to people that you are exempt, but sometimes when they've lost everything, faith is the only thing that's keeping them together. So whatever gives them a peace of mind, that's fine by me. So yeah, it's Ramadan, and then we came onto the coronavirus pandemic. We are in lockdown, which is gradually lifting as of last week. It just meant, I mean, the camp itself is 2 hours away from the city. It takes 2 hours for people to walk. Taxis could only take one person due to the lockdown. People can't afford taxis to begin with, but secondly, if you can't share the cost with other people, it's even harder. We couldn't get aid in. We got some aid in other ways, but we couldn't do our usual distributions. We were getting daily distress calls from people. Volunteers have left. There's not enough supplies. There's not enough support. But we're talking about a camp where they can't even wash their hands properly or practice social distancing,
Yeah. And in a country where like 3 camps on the mainland have had COVID-19 cases, and the response by the authorities is to lock everyone inside the camp.
Yeah.
So people have this deadly disease that's causing havoc around the world, and you're being locked in with them, not locked out. And I can't imagine how terrifying a thought that must be for people.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that Vial Camp has escaped coronavirus so far.
Yes.
And we can only hope and pray that carries on.
Yes, I hope so. Yeah.
Yep. The last question from me before we move on to questions from anybody that's listening. So if you do have your questions now, please post them and I should be able to see them on the side. Can you talk about what it means to have the support of people at home here in the UK and from around the world, and what it is we can all do to help or keep helping?
The support from the people who are donating aid or coming out to volunteer or sending us monetary donations and raising funds, and organizations like Donate for Refugees, it means the whole world to me and the people we are supporting. I mean, without you guys, it's not possible. We are trying to look after thousands of people who have very, very little, and it is so important. I think now more than ever, this is my message to everyone, is that we show a unified front. We are in the middle of a coronavirus pandemic, and I know that, we are all being affected financially. People have lost jobs or not being able to work. And of course, it is so important that we look after those near and dear to us, but we need to show a unified front and help those who are in Europe or further afield, like India or Bangladesh or Pakistan, because I just feel like, many of us are still much luckier than others. We can practice social distancing in our own homes. And I know that my family is fine and happy and okay in UK at the moment. And we can all still share a little bit, even if it's only £1, you can still donate to Vial Refugees or Refugee Biriyani and Bananas. It will make all the difference.
Thank you very much, Ruhi. Right, I'm just going to take a look at the comments and just see if there are any questions. If anybody wants to post a question, I can't actually see any questions from anybody right now, so I'm a little bit surprised. But if anybody wants to post a question, then please do. Otherwise, Ruhi and I will continue chatting. So your next mission, you said, was going to be the food, and you're collecting those containers now. And sorry, Julia's just commented saying, thank you so much for all you are doing. I'm donating when I can. So thank you very much, Julie. That means a lot to both of us. Yeah, so when you do your next mission, you've talked about your friends and your brothers in camp that will help. As you sort the food out, what's that going to look like? Do they come down from the camp and help at your container? Will they be sort of unpacking 5,000 bits of food and distributing them into carrier bags?
Yeah, so we will be putting them into carrier bags. I don't like using plastic, but right now we don't have another option right now. it's even more difficult because actually we don't have enough volunteers on the ground to drive. So, and they can only come two in a taxi now as the lockdown is lifting. So we are actually using taxis to transport people because actually right now I'm the only driver for my organization, and I'm also trying to help another organization with their distributions, and we're having to transport people around. So yeah, we will be splitting all the food, putting them into individual packs, and that's going to be really quite difficult, especially in the heat. And some of the guys are fasting, and I'm fasting as well, so that will be quite difficult. But it will be worth it.
And it's about 40 degrees there at the moment?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yeah, so I can't imagine that heat as well. Well, I can, I've been in it. Becky just wants to add, thank you for everything you've done. We've been supporting CERST for a while, so we all know Tula and good friends. Is there a big difference between what you're doing and what Tula and CERST are doing, or are you working together? Good question, Becky.
Yeah, it's a good question. CERST have been really supportive. We have been doing some work together. So when I was doing my winter distributions, some of the volunteers were helping me with my distributions. They also provided me with some aid. I provided water supplies that came, bottles of water that came in my container to them for the boat landings. And they are opening a new distribution center as well. So what we try and do is all the organizations here, we have some good rapport going on. So we try and work together so we kind of fill in the gaps that are missing and we don't duplicate. So we have a coordination chat, and the first guys, all of them are on there as well.
And I think it's actually been quite nice because everyone's always had their heads down and got on with what they're doing, I think, in Chios. And everyone's known everybody else, but it's difficult to get the time to work together. But the COVID lockdown has actually sort of forced the issue a little bit because there's not enough volunteers for everybody, and you've all had to really, really, really work closely together. And I think it's formed even closer bonds and closer friendships, which I personally really like.
Yeah, and I think when sort of the attacks were happening on the volunteers, we all had like meetings about that as well, and it was really nice how like everybody was taking care of each other. Like I remember Tula and Mary Wanker, one of the other volunteers, he just taking me aside and saying, how am I feeling? Because obviously I'm visibly Muslim, and whether that's affecting me. And luckily I've been okay, other than one day where my car was followed. But I thought that was really nice.
Yes, it is. It is really nice, and it's been nice to see everybody come together. Really nice. We have another comment here. I'm not sure who it's from. Furs last, just saying that it is difficult times for refugees in Chios, and that we all need to campaign to our governments not to detain people. And I couldn't agree with that sentiment more. And we will do everything that we can to campaign, to sign the petitions, to try and get our governments to change. We've had some people being moved from the islands, and even some relocations, some family reunifications to the UK, which is almost unprecedented in recent weeks, and we want obviously to support that and to make sure more of that happens going forward. So without any further questions, I'm going to say, Ruhi, it's been a real pleasure, firstly, to catch up with you, because it's really nice to see you again as a friend. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today, as always. And you know I'm going to be back to help as soon as I can. Thank you from all of us here for everything that you're doing in Chios and everything that you've always done to help refugees. Thank you to everybody listening who joined us today, and anybody that catches up with us afterwards, and for bearing with us. Ruhi's going to add her fundraising link and also a link for volunteering into the comments on this post, assuming I do the technology right and it posts properly. She'll add that in so that you can see where you can sign up as a volunteer. Our next live online is on Sunday, the 31st of May, where Sue Lacey will be speaking to Charlie Whitbread, who is currently supporting in Dunkirk as a co-founder of Mobile Refugee Support. So join us again on the 31st for Sue and Charlie. But thank you very much indeed, Ruhi. Take care. We'll speak very, very soon.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.